Hey friends, welcome to the first episode of 2023. I'm so glad that you have joined me. I pray that your Christmas and New Year's was a time of joy, refreshment, connection, reflection, and above all, peace. Personally, I was able to spend time with my family and enjoy some quiet, restful days reflecting on 2022 and setting some intentions for 2023. One of those intentions I want to share with you today because it specifically focuses on the podcast. To date, I've primarily focused on taking a conversational approach to health and wellness related topics. And this will certainly continue as the main format for the show. However, in an effort to bring more resources to the WellMind community, I'm going to be adding an additional mini episode format. I plan to call these mini episodes Tools for the WellMind. During these mini episodes, I plan to introduce a specific strategy or practice aimed to enhance or add to your wellness toolbox. So through these bite-sized episodes, I hope to offer simple practices that you can implement immediately. My goal is to publish one tool for the WellMind each month in 2023, resulting in 12 tools over the course of the next year. There, I've put it out to you as a way of holding myself accountable and making this a reality. I do find that this simple act of verbalizing and sharing our goals with others really deepens motivation and makes that goal more real. All right, let's get into the episode. My dear friend, Dr. Jennifer Londgren, is back. Now, I have been holding on to this one for a little while now, which is unusual. Typically, I plan, record, edit, and publish the episodes all within 3 to 4 weeks. So in part, I just got really busy again with wrapping up the fall semester here at Bethany and couldn't get into the studio the way I wanted to. But the other part is that in this episode, Jenna shares specifically about her work on a very special project. And this project is aimed at supporting educator wellness. So really trying to reach the teachers, the educators in our school systems. And this project has been going through development and accessibility reviews and those kind of things. So it wasn't quite ready when we sat down for this conversation. She did share it with me, kind of an early preview, and I was able to access the platform, take a look at some of the content and the layout, and I was just so excited for it. I think it's just going to be a wonderful, wonderful resource for so many people. And I just think it's important to get this information out so that when the platform does officially go live, you all, as part of the WellMind community, are going to know about it and you're going to have direct access to it. And you'll be able to share that information out with others. I'm sure many of you are educators yourself, or know family, friends, community members that are educators and could really benefit from this wellness-based platform. So you can share that information and this episode with them. So if you've been a member of the WellMind community, you are well acquainted with Jenna. This is her third time on the podcast. But if you haven't actually listened to her previous episodes, then I promise you're in for a treat. She's just an amazing person in every way, and I'm super grateful to call her my friend. And true to form, in our conversation, themes of self-care, wellness, habit formation, system setting, values, balance in life, and relationship health are all permeating the conversation. So let's get to it. Here is my chat with Dr. Jenna Londgren in episode 36 of the WellMind podcast. Jenna, it's great to have you back in the studio. How's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks so much. It's Friday. It's MEA break.
Yep.
So I've got some fun things planned with my family and after this, I'm kind of done for the weekend.
Oh, very nice. So I'm your last thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great way to end the week on this conversation.
Yes. I was in the studio a couple of Fridays ago, and that was my sentiment walking out. Like, there isn't anything better for me than being in the studio on Friday and just doing this, having a great conversation, and having that energy carry me into the weekend.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a nice way to connect and to have a creative time to lead you into rest and restorative, time with your family.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we were chatting before I hit the record button here, and this is your third appearance on the Well Mind. So the only person that can say that. There's been a couple of doubles, but not a triple appearance yet. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just honored. Thanks for listening. Wanting to hear from me.
Yes. Our conversations with you always go over very well with the listeners. So you were episode 1, episode 16, and now episode 34. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, third time's a charm, I hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we'll just keep building.
Yes.
We'll just keep building, for sure. Well, how have you been? Just catch me up a little bit on what life has been like. Even going back into the summer a little bit, what you've been working on and how things have been going.
Sure. Yes, I'd love to do that. Well, I think the biggest change since I was here last is that I have another baby. So I have 4 kiddos.
Congrats.
8 and under. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. 2 and 2, 2 boys, 2 girls. So I would say my life is kind of this continual dance and balance and navigation of being a mom, being a professor, and then my newest endeavor that started this summer is being a health consultant. So I very, very sadly ended my employment with Christian Family Solutions of being a therapist. I worked with that company for 8 years. My whole adult life as a mother. I started when I was expecting my first child.
Okay.
And then ended my employment after the birth of my 4th. So it was just this beautiful relationship and season of my life that I had with this organization. And then I just kind of had this reflective time. And as I mentioned to you, this season of winter of kind of hunkering down and reflecting and just being still and quiet with my family and on maternity leave. And then this new opportunity unfolded where I started working for a grant, a COVID relief grant that focuses on supporting the mental health of educators. So I have done a lot of presentations on my self-care work with educators. I've gotten some big contracts with school districts, District 77 in Mankato, and then Anoka Hennepin. I did some work with them last year, Anoka Hennepin school systems.
Yep, I remember you talking about that. Yeah,
so I started this grant work, and it's just been this really interesting position to be in, having these kind of conversations. How do we impact and support educators who are, working with students who are dysregulated, who haven't been in the classroom in years, who have this apathy, who are just struggling. And one of my coworkers said that she was at a conference and there was a study that came out and 91% of educators said that they plan to leave the field within 5 years. 91%.
Wow.
So it's just, these are the people who are teaching our children and they're struggling greatly. And being in a position to support them in creative ways has been really amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's been, I don't know, it seems like the dominoes have just fallen pretty quickly with some of this stuff, because I do remember you talking about, having some self-care presentations or trainings or those kind of things. But now it seems like that consultant role has really expanded for you professionally.
Yeah. Yep. I don't even know how I ended up getting this position, but I had reached out and asked this person who I had worked with if they needed more presentations, and she passed my name along until they're like, hey, we have a team. We need mental health providers and specialists.
Yeah.
Can you join this team in a more permanent role? And I said yes. It's just such a high impact work that and it's so different than working at a university, in a union, in a state system. It's very open, and whatever we want to do, we can do. And we have the funding and we have the support to do it. It's just such an interesting position.
Yeah.
So that along with, being a mom to 4 kids and having a full-time job as a professor, also having this as kind of a creative outlet and this collaboration with these other providers and with these other entities has been kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It really is. I remember too, when we were talking and you'd made that reference to kind of being in a season of life where you were more stepping back. And I thought to myself, that's not going to last very long.
You know me too well.
Yeah.
I'm just doing nothing.
Yeah.
I am just, being present.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, right.
Yeah. No, I believe that. I believe that you were. I just think, then you have an energy about you that you can't really hold back. So even if you were taking some intentional time, like on maternity leave and things like that, which is great, awesome. I just know that energy can't be contained for too long.
Yes, I know. It is true. I need to start organizing something or putting my house in order.
Yep.
KonMariing my whole house, noticing what sparks joy.
Right.
No, it has, but I really have. I do feel like I've slowed down though. Honestly, it sounds like this is so much, but
it does. So help me understand that contrast
sure.
of doing these big projects, but feeling like life has been able to be slower.
Yeah. Well, I was reflecting back, last year at this time, I was pregnant. I got in a car accident in September. So we had one car as my car was getting repaired. We were also redoing our roof. So, and just getting everything in order. It was survival mode.
Yeah.
It was just really challenging. And I'm reflecting back now kind of where we were last year. I'm like, oh my goodness, how did I do that all? Preparing for maternity leave, just all of these things. And now we're out of survival mode. And we have these systems set up with our kids going to school, our 3rd child's going to preschool. And my goal is to work about every day, with Fridays being flexible from drop off to pick up. So my goal is to kind of contain my work from about 8 to 2:30. And I took my email off of my phone and I'm not on any technology when my kids are home from about 2:30 to 6:30, 7:30 till they're in bed.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm onto something for myself. It doesn't feel like I'm a workaholic who's always distracted. It seems like when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm home. And the days that I don't teach, sometimes I work from home with my littles having childcare. But for one of the first times in my life as a parent, I do feel like I have a system of balance and I'm out of this survival mode. So that's what I mean when I say it's slowed down. And all of my grant work is virtual too. I might go to the cities once in a while, maybe once a month, get my Trader Joe's stop in. So it's worth it. But it's weird though. Honestly, I read about this concept that's called mourning the familiar misery. With any change in your life, it's uncomfortable. I'm used to being overwhelmed a lot and just activated all the time. Oh my gosh, what fire do I need to put out next? And I don't feel like that now. I'm I can just sit and read a magazine right now if my 2 littles are sleeping and I'm home and my work is done. So it's like that survival mode is my familiar misery and I'm not there right now. And it can be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's beautiful. In those transitions, I don't totally know what you're talking about because I haven't cracked the code on that yet for myself. But there are definitely times where life is very full and I have more things that I could possibly do in a week's time or 2 weeks' time. And I'm kind of coming out of a little bit of that over the past month with things here at the program for clinical mental health counseling. And I just think it's hard to sit and actually be comfortable sitting because I'm more thinking about, all these other things that I could be doing or should be doing, needing to get done, that are kind of grabbing for my attention. And that's a tricky place to be in, because then it's hard to be fully present with the thing that's in front of you when you've got the list of things running in the back of your head. And it sounds like you've been able to quiet some of that.
Yes, and it's not perfect by any means, but
What?
it is odd.
I thought it was totally perfect.
Yeah, right. No.
I'm sitting at the feet
I'm just reading Magnolia
wisdom.
Journals by the fire and just not feeling guilty.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people feel guilty when they rest.
Yeah.
And a lot of high achievers or a lot of teachers. I work with a lot of teachers and they're like, I cannot sit still. I feel guilty. And the work just doesn't get that done then. Mm-hmm. And then I just have to do it later. So I might as well just, it's kind of like push it and work and then just crash and then, binge watch Netflix and then anxiously re-engage.
Yeah.
So
that's a gross cycle.
Yeah, it is. But I think just knowing that rest matters and just being in alignment. Like Trevor was saying the other day, he's just like, I just don't feel well. Like, I just don't feel good. I'm tired, but I got a lot of sleep. And like, he had wanted to like keep working on something. I'm like, if you don't feel well, just rest, like lay down. You don't need to push through. You can just listen to your body and be in alignment with what your body needs. Like that is okay. And I think that is something that has changed for me, that belief that it's okay to rest and that it's necessary and that it's a beautiful investment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, aspirational. That's really good stuff. And I know, again, seasons of life that this may not be the time for everybody to be able to do that in their life. I know that's a challenge for me. So I was kind of referencing like the past month. Really, it's been since the fall school year started. Things have just accelerated massively here at Bethany, and we had 2 residencies this fall where all of our students come to campus for 4 days of intensive counseling work. And I'm on center stage for one of those, and one of my colleagues is on center stage, as we say, for the other one. But, there's a high level of involvement still for all of us. And we want to make that experience really special and impactful for our students. So like everything else just kind of gets set to the side so that we can be entirely focused on that. But that just doesn't, it means those things haven't gone away, And so even this week has been less scheduled, I would say, but still very full with trying to recover. And I don't like the phrase catch up, because that's, I think, a misnomer. I never get to a place where I'm like, oh, everything on my list is done and I don't have anything to do. That's not a helpful way for me to think, but instead just feeling more accomplished with like, okay, I did accomplish these things. And I feel that way coming into our conversation today, so I can be present with us and this time. And I think, okay, well, there's still some things that I can accomplish this afternoon too, before leaving town. And that's what I'm doing tonight after my boys get out of their afternoon football practice. We're all going to drive over to Sioux Falls and spend the weekend over there and see friends, and that'll be a really good time too.
That's awesome. Do you stay at the water park?
So we're actually going to crash at somebody's house. They're out of town and they have a dog, and they were like, hey, if you're going to come over to town, do you want to just stay at our house? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to stay at their house and take care of their dog. And I have a trail run that I'm going to do with some friends on Saturday morning.
Cool.
And probably get some good food and hang out after that too.
That's amazing. That's a win-win for evereverone, for the dog too. Yeah. You're going to take the dog on the run?
No, I think
you're too fast for
my friend Jeremy indicated he's a bit elderly. So he's, he'll just be happy to have some company around the house while they're gone.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that is nice when you can feel like a guilt-free vacation, or when you can kind of put everything in order and then transition to being with your family and really be with them. Yeah. And I think that is something that's a constant balance and a constant navigation. Because if you do have a lot on your plate, if you have things coming up, kind of always catching up, and especially for educators, just correcting.
Yeah. Oh,
like that is one thing. It's like, it never goes away.
No, it's like laundry.
Yeah, it is. And I teach a writing intensive class, and I have all the drafts of my students that I need to correct still. But I don't feel as distracted or as burdened by it as I used to, of like activated by it.
Yeah.
Like I can do that after my kids go to bed or early in the morning or just in some dedicated time. It doesn't have to like bleed together for this constant state of chaos, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had a big transition this fall as well in our household because my wife, Sarah, has gone back to teaching full time. She has her own classroom. She's teaching 3rd and 4th grade at one of the grade schools here. And she is loving it. Like, it's awesome. It's been a fantastic experience for her. Working with the kids is a real treasure for her. And it's just meant a lot of shifting within our family and our, like, where kids go after school and dynamics that way. And everything from cooking meals to transportation to, everything has been like kind of thrown up in the air, and we're saying, okay, how do we reshuffle this? How do we figure this out? So a couple of months in at this point, well, almost 3 months in at this point, I feel like we're finally establishing a little bit of a routine. And some fall sports are winding down as well, which
it's a good feeling.
Yeah. And it was beautiful. It was so fun going to soccer and volleyball and football and all of the things. Like, I love it. And it'll be nice to have some evenings at home again too. So it's just, it's been hard to nail down exactly what the week is supposed to look like for us now. But I think we're getting there.
Yeah. Same with us. And speaking of seasons, like those sports seasons, we had soccer and, weekend games and all of these things. And it's nice while it lasts, but it's also nice when it ends as well. And you can enter a new season.
Yeah.
And as you were speaking, it also made me think about every time a school year starts, what I say now is like, I'm in a system setting mode. Like, we're setting systems. And just like you said, with these constant transitions of sports or people going back to work or residencies, like what happens week to week, it's like these systems kind of ebb and flow. So like, I went back to work, my kids went back to school, and then my daughter went to preschool. So it's like this constant like building and adjusting and kind of having a foundation and then just having some flexibility within it.
Yeah.
And that is kind of, it's nice to put a name to it, I think. I just call it system setting. Like that is, I just kept saying that over and over. Like, this is my system setting. Like, when do you work out? How do you meal plan? Who does what?
Yeah.
How do you get the kids in a place? Like, when do you practice piano? And how do you, just make sure everyone's needs are met in the family, and just understanding what we want to accomplish. Like, what is this all for? And what are our values as well? Because I think that's something that's been really meaningful to me, is kind of naming our values and then seeing how what we do aligns with them. So one of my core values is simplicity. And the way that I interpret that is like simplicity in my relationships, simplicity in my schedule, simplicity in my house. Like, I don't like chaos. I don't like being rushed and overscheduled as contrary to popular belief.
Yeah.
Simplicity, like in my faith, with my friendships, in my health, in my marriage, in my home. I like to keep it just like simple and straightforward. And it doesn't mean easy, but it means, I don't know, balanced and clear and organized, I guess, to me. But just kind of navigating, like, is this out of alignment with that core value of simplicity? Is having 3 events in one day? Because that's what we're looking at, right? Like being invited to parties, invited to outings, invited to different groups. I've had days where my kids, the same kid had 3 birthday parties in 2 days. That's a lot for one 6-year-old person.
Yeah.
So just really, for me, it was helpful to kind of clarify my core values and then kind of set a system so it can operate in alignment to that. And it's weird to say, right? Because it's just like, do all the things, like you just kind of do and then feel relieved without this like reflection or clarity, which is kind of new for me this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I reflect back on our previous conversations for the podcast and what different seasons like our whole like community was in during those times. Like the very first time we sat down was like, 4 or 5 months into COVID, right? And like community and life looked so different at that point. And then, sitting down in the spring of or late winter of 21, like again, things were re-emerging at that point. But now I feel like in many ways, life has kind of ticked back up. And so I miss some of the stillness and quietness that was taking place, over the last couple of years, because that's just not where we're at. And I'm not begrudging any of the goodness of things that are happening now, but I appreciate that reminder of grounding yourself in your core values and letting that be the directional compass for how you run your day and what system you're developing for your family, and prioritizing that way, because it feels like it can get out of hand pretty quickly when we lose track of those values.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because I think a lot of us, like, we know what our values are. Like, okay, so faith and family and friends, right? Like, I think it's like a Hobby Lobby sign, right? Like, kind of cliche. But I did this training. I did a Brene Brown Dare to Lead training this summer. And it was like I don't know, I think we met 4 times for 8 hours. Like, it was pretty intensive. And one of the activities was to just name your core values. You had to name 2. And they gave you a list of words, or you could fill in your own. And it really pushes you to find the nuance in them and to really kind of reflect and to name it. Yeah. And I think having that name is so powerful. And my other one that I named is growth. And I think that also puts a name to my priorities and, as we joke about, like, my constant sort of activation, but it's me growing. And then I don't feel bad or ashamed or embarrassed at like all of the things I'm always doing, because that's operating in alignment with my core values. Yeah. And I like saying that because it's like, you can have permission to be in a new position or to get out of your comfort zone or to try this new thing. Like that feels good to me. That feels whole to me. That's me operating out of integrity. So it's just nice to name it. And on my platform that I shared with you, there's a whole video and a list of core values. And we kind of start some of the content on that platform talking about core values and why they're important and why naming them matters.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's been a practice of mine for sure. Clinically, in working with clients, is helping them clarify their values, so that we're working on the right things, or we're working in the right direction, because so much of the time clinically, it's about management or alleviation of pain and suffering. And I think starting with a values-based perspective is really important in being able to say, okay, well, as we're going through this or making changes, like, what are we aiming for? What are we moving toward? And then for the students in our counseling program as well, like that's an essential process for them early on in their development as counselors in training, is to clarify their values, because that informs so much of why they're here, why they want to do this work, and what's going to sustain them in the field as they do that work, which I think is parallel to what you're talking about with educators and doing this with this platform. So let's spend a little time diving into this platform that I perused briefly when you sent the link over, and was able to look at it. So I just scratched the surface for sure, but give us the origin story of this education-based or educator-focused platform that's in development?
Sure, I'd love to. It's one of the biggest projects that I've ever worked on professionally that's like such a tangible product as the result. So as I mentioned, I'm working with this COVID relief grant, and my focus is on the mental health of educators and just the whole school system in general. But we're focusing on educators because they're really the glue to administration, to school staff, and to students and families is the teachers. So we have a budget, and we're working in the metro area, but we're really opening this platform up to anyone. But our question was really, how do we support the mental health of educators on this big scale, right? So you can go to a school and sit with the teachers and hear what the issues are. But I think the number of schools that my specific educational cooperative serves is about 416. So those are the schools in the metro that we work with, and that's just too many. So we had this idea to build a platform that's like a professional place where we produced professional content. And it's kind of crazy how it all worked out. But we ended up, I'm with a coworker who's a school social worker, and we had a 2-day shoot, and we filmed 22 videos in 2 days. Really modeling it after the phases of first year teaching. So it's like anticipation, survival, disillusionment, reflection, and rejuvenation. So within those topics, we developed all of this content for mental health, for wellness, for mindset that goes under each of the phases of a teacher. We developed all of the content ourselves. We developed all of the resources, and then we filmed it. And we worked with OMG, the Auto Media Group in Mankato. I knew a contractor who worked for them, Kurt Schrader. So I reached out to Kurt. He's a videographer, editor. And I just said, hey, what do you think? We had some meetings. But it was such a fascinating project because it was amazing to see it start as an idea, and now it's a full functioning platform with 22 professionally edited and filmed videos that are available to educators and anyone who wants to see them. So I talked with our executive director and our grant manager, Linnea, my coworker, and we're like, we just want to make this accessible to anyone. We don't want to limit it to the metro, limited it to the schools who are in partnership with our cooperative. Like, we just want this available because teachers are struggling so much. So it was such a whirlwind to shoot that much content in 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's huge. Yeah.
And we, like I said, it was like, we wanted it to be very personable and homey. So we filmed it in a house that we rented. Like, we rented out a residence. That's just a beautiful new build. This poor family, they had 2 little kids, and it was a friend of someone from the company, but they would like leave in the morning, and we just set up cameras and lighting and just it looked like a movie studio. Wow. We had professional hair and makeup and like catered food, and like I just felt like a celebrity. Yeah. And then Linnea and I are just like drinking coffee and talking about these topics, and we just shot it, and they just recorded us, and the product is 22 videos on mental health and wellness, kind of following these broad phases.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. Again, that just speaks to that energy that I was referring to that you have that cannot be contained. It sounds exhausting too. So I wonder, like, you really leaned into that for 2 days. Then what did the 2-3 days after that look like?
Oh man. I was just kind of in shock, to be honest. Like, really? That it was such a growth experience. Like, that took it to the next level for me, because just having to transition from video to video so quickly, having, Linnea would had some, I would had some, like, we kind of looked into what we're really passionate about, what we've lectured on, in past workshops and things like that. But just, they had 3 cameras going. So they like switched perspectives. Yeah. So when she was talking, I'd be listening, and it was so much energy expended. But afterward, I'm like, I just need to like process this. Like I was tired, but I was still pleasant.
Yeah.
Low energy, moderate pleasantness.
Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about this primarily being focused on teachers in the metro, right? So these are urban environment teachers. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the suburbs too.
And the suburbs,
like it's not just downtown Minneapolis and super urban. Like it's just kind of the greater Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
Okay.
But we're really opening it up to everyone. So I have one of my best friends is a teacher in New Ulm. I shared it with her.
Okay.
So it's not like it's limited to that, but that's just where we're housed is out of Arden Hills.
Okay.
So
okay. As I was looking at the platform, it seems like it's almost laid out in like a sequential manner. So you would start at the beginning and kind of work through each kind of series of videos. Is that kind of how it's laid out?
That's how it's laid out, but it's almost like, I mean, the phases of it's based off of the phases of a first year teacher. So if it depends on when you're accessing it, I would say.
Okay.
So it really starts at this anticipation phase. So it's like, that's when we talk about core values, this concept of best self, habits, routines, and rituals. It's like prepping for the school year. But I'd say if you're accessing it in November, December, then that might be like the disillusionment type content when it's like the neurobiology of stress and trauma, demoralization and burnout. We just have videos that kind of speak to where people might be.
Got it.
So I would say it depends on when you access it. Because if you're watching it now, and it's me being like, yay, we all love school supplies, get some fresh Post-its. You're like, no, this doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
Or, my system setting stuff, I talk a lot about that in my habits and kind of the science behind habits and things like that. But I would say it really depends on when you access it. But it is kind of designed, it's laid out to be like the menu of contents kind of starts with those first phases.
Got it.
But there's this like reflection phase that could be over winter break too. So it's kind of a pick and choose your own menu.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that there is a sequence to it. Things are laid out. I mean, to me, it seemed like very well organized, which is unsurprising coming from a project that you're working on. It's just very well organized. But to be able to kind of pick and choose, okay, here's a topic that is kind of speaks to me in this moment with what I'm dealing with, and I can access that. Like, how long are the videos? How much are we talking?
Some of them are 2 minutes, some are like 25. Okay. So it's a wide range, but
those are very digestible videos.
Yes.
I mean, because sometimes, so like you had mentioned, it's MEA right now, and a lot of teachers are, all day they're at a conference, all day they're listening to different speakers. Like, it's a huge investment of like time and resources to be able to do that. And I think that's incredibly valuable and needs to continue. Yet this serves a slightly different like purpose in being able to have these kind of manageable, bite-sized, like little injections of support or education or something to reflect on.
Yeah, and we really didn't want it to feel like people were being talked at. That's what Linnea kept saying. She worked in the schools. She worked, in the trenches with administration and students and teachers. She has so much passion, and she's like, we cannot talk at them. We can't just say, do more self-care, do more self-care. It can't be do more and here's what you're doing wrong. It has to feel supportive. So we just designed the whole thing to feel like you were having coffee with friends and learning and just kind of being encouraged. Wow. So that's like, it's not sterile. It's very raw. Like they edited it very little.
Okay.
Like we just kind of went.
Yeah.
And
it is what
and
it
I
is.
liked that. And that's the feedback that we've heard. Linnea shared it with some of her friends who are working in the metro. And she said someone just burst into tears after watching one video. She's like, I didn't know that this was how I felt. I didn't know how much I was struggling. Because I think sometimes with burnout, it's like you're either burned out or you're not. And you don't think you are, but you might just feel demoralized. And that's really the word that we used. We have a whole video on just demoralization.
Okay.
And Linnea really dug into that one. But I think that one really fits for people who are struggling, who don't feel supported, who don't feel, they just feel very dehumanized in the schools. Because what we're hearing is a lot of teachers have pressure from administration to get the assessment scores up. That if the students don't meet this certain, level of competency, they lose funding. So if a teacher is struggling, if a teacher, is having a hard time or is struggling with mental health challenges, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just got to get the assessment scores up.
Okay.
And the students are dysregulated and not listening. One of my neighbors subs, and she said she was in a classroom and there was a little person who screamed for 28 minutes, like who just was screaming, and they're just doing everything they can to help this person regulate. But how can a teacher teach, and how can students learn in that environment? How can any assessment be valid?
Yeah.
So just this kind of rehumanizing people, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just seeing them, helping communicate that they matter, and asking what they need.
Yeah.
And helping provide that for them however you can.
Yeah.
But it's just like this dehumanization that's occurring. And I think that's, just to be very blunt with it, that's what's happening.
Well, and the individual that burst into tears, like the connection that person like experienced with that video is what was powerful, because it was naming something. It was giving them language to be able to describe and articulate what their experience has been. And that's empowering in and of itself. Because if we can't even name something, there's no way for us to do anything about it.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Yes. Like, so just to be able to use language to name things, to be able to describe it, to say, okay, I'm not the only one, there's some universality in this, because this is a video on a platform that's, hundreds, thousands of teachers are going to be able to access. So it speaks to the general experience. And it's based in research too, right? This isn't something that you guys are just coming up with based on your own lived experience, but you're tying this into some really good evidence-based research as well.
Yes, and just that whole name it, the name it to tame it, right? That is so important, and that's one of our videos is based on the work of Mark Brackett. He wrote a book that's called Permission to Feel, and he developed a tool that's called the Mood Meter. Okay. And that has really kind of changed my professional life and even my personal life with how I name my feelings and talk to my kids about it. Because what's cool is that instead of saying like, these are bad feelings, or like, you need to get out of the red zone, even in schools, we say like, these are good, these are bad. If you're angry, it's bad. He really talks about feelings in terms of energy and pleasantness, instead of like good and bad. So none of those, if you're high energy, low pleasantness, that's okay. That could be anger, and that's how things get done, that's how movements are made and change happens. Anger, anxiety are really functional feelings. If you're low energy, low pleasantness, that could be sadness or depression or despair and hopelessness. But what's interesting, what he talks about, if you can name, disheartened, just even naming it before it becomes despair is protective in and of itself. Or just disappointed. I feel disappointed. If you can name that and your brain can say, okay, we have a framework for how to deal with disappointed, and you can get support for that, not only for yourself, but also the people in your life can support you when you're disappointed. That can help regulate before it intensifies to hopelessness and despair, right? Like, I just think that's such an important thing to consider. And the other thing that I've noticed is that high energy, high pleasantness isn't the goal. Like, that's not the goal all the time. Like, that's unrealistic and annoying, frankly. And I might seem like that, but I'm not high energy, high pleasantness all the time. And like, it's not desirable to be that. And I think a lot of people feel the pressure to be, I'm good, I'm fine, everything's great. I'm living life, good vibes only. And Susan George out of Harvard really talks about like this idea of how that's toxic to just say good vibes only. It's like, there's no room for sadness or disappointment or anguish if it's good vibes only.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of teachers too have this pressure to be chipper and friendly, even when they don't feel it. And that's just operating out of alignment. So not only naming it, but also having these continuums of energy and pleasantness, I think is really interesting. So like if Trevor says, "How are you?" I'll be like, "Well, I'm pretty low energy, but I'm pretty moderate pleasantness." And isn't that an interesting way? Like that's some good data instead of like, "I'm fine. Ugh, I'm stressed," right? Like I'm pretty low energy, but I'm mediocre pleasantness depending on what time of night it is and how many times my 3-year-old has gotten out of bed for food and snacks.
Sure. That's really interesting. So you're using both the scaling terminology here of energy and pleasantness, but then you are still naming like concrete specific feelings too. Disheartened. So when we say we joke about that both in my office setting that we don't use the word fine, and we don't use that at home either, and we call each other out if somebody says that they're fine. But stressed, even anxious, like some of those things, they're really umbrella kind of feeling words. And so it seems like you're expanding the crayon box a bit here with using more specific emotional language.
Yep. And one word that has really fit for me is depleted. I love that word. Instead of saying I'm stressed, like I feel depleted, or I feel disappointed, or I feel anxious, or I just feel, just having some nuance to it really matters. Once again, not only for yourself and your own brain to have a template for how do we cope with that, but also for the people in your life to help them support you and understand your experience.
Yeah. The concept of vulnerability comes to mind here. So how do you balance vulnerability with this while also, having boundaries for yourself and because a teacher in a classroom may be like, high energy, low pleasantness kind of coming in, but then where are the boundaries for what that looks like in the room, and how, like, in what ways do they express that in a vulnerable way, but also, maintaining that integrity as the teacher of the classroom?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, timing is really important. And I think setting, I don't know if they would say to their students, "I'm really crabby today, so just back off," but I think that,
well, I'm concerned that sometimes that's what happens, is that like we come into whatever space we're in, we bring ourselves in there, and then that sets the tone as well. And so this like pressure to be chipper and happy, like there's a utility in recognizing like how I present myself and how I bring myself into this space, that's going to set a tone as well. But so how do I be authentic in that?
Yeah.
And also understand like, hey, I'm in a position where I have some influence.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it starts with you having awareness of how you're doing, because I think so many people just don't. They just fly in like, "Oh, what am I doing today? Oh no." And then it's like an act. It's like they're acting, trying to be pleasant, but it's so much energy to operate out of alignment that I think just saying, "I'm worn out, I'm feeling demoralized, I'm feeling overwhelmed," and like that's okay. I'm just recognizing it and naming it. Like that's step one.
Yeah.
And just having some practices built into your morning, built into your school day, having some time, or like even if it's in the car, just checking in with yourself all the time. Like I do that all the time, and sharing it and letting your coworkers know. Like it's having boundaries. Like I don't think just, emoting all over the place and talking about your problems and sharing it on social media, like in a way with bad boundaries is the answer. But I think authentically sharing is very healthy, but there's a time and place for it. But I really think it starts with you naming it and understanding it and having an awareness, and then just kind of saying, okay, what do I need right now? What are ways that I can change my state? But I do think a lot of people, they act and they try to be chipper, but then they might snap. Or when they get home, then they're so worn out that their family gets the brunt of the act. Their family gets all of the, low energy or high energy and very low pleasantness, because it's exhausting to have to act all the time. But I think if you yourself can name and accept your feelings, whatever they are, I think that's where it starts. And to just have some systems, once again, in place to help you change your state, to help you recognize it, accept it, acknowledge it, have a lot of self-compassion, and then just have some, curiosity about it as well, and some flexibility with what you do to cope with it.
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts too, as I'm processing this. So context is important. Like, there are certain relationships in which you can be more authentic, vulnerable, open, raw about your state. And then there are other situations or contexts in which, like, you're not going to lead with that, but it still may be helpful to acknowledge it in a boundaried fashion. And kind of the extreme example of, I'm going to put this out on social media, or I'm going to broadcast this in, my classroom or something like that, saying, okay, well, there's a breakdown in boundaries there. So that's important. But then also recognizing that boundaries can't be masking, and I can't be fake or manufacturing something that's not really there, because that's going to come at a cost to me and to the people that I care about. Yeah.
I think you summed it up super well. And kids are smart.
They are.
They know. They can ask. And I just think talking about it is so important. If my kids say, "What's wrong?" I'll say, "I'm just feeling really frustrated, and I'm just worn out." And I don't expect them to support me emotionally at all. 0% chance. But I just think being honest and vulnerable and authentic.
Sure, you're
then
modeling.
They're like, okay. Yeah. Okay, that happens. Yeah. Parents can get tired. Yeah. And I like kind of having that on the front end, instead of me snapping at them or being crabby or reacting in a way that's out of alignment with my values. Yeah. And I just think that's really healthy.
Yeah, well, it's emotionally competent. I mean, that's what that is. Being able to name, express, your feelings, but then also be personally responsible for them. Yeah. And not making other people responsible for them. Yeah. I mean, that's.
And I read this quote or somewhere it said, it's impossible to be in the presence of another human without being influenced by their emotion. And I always think of the concept of co-regulation with our kids all the time, my kids. It's a lot of co-regulating with a lot of little people all the time.
Well, and then teachers are having to manage 20, 25, 30 of those.
Co-regulate. Oh, I know. Yes. Yeah. It's a lot.
It is.
That's why that having your own emotion regulation and a foundation of it is just critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And a system of support for that with the other, whether it's the other colleagues that you have in the building or other adults in your life, other relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels good.
Another kind of aspect to this that I'm curious about is the habit piece, because you were talking about that. That's one of the earlier videos, it sounds like, in the series, is kind of talking about systems and habits. And I know that's a big area of interest for you personally and professionally. So we don't have to dive deep into this, but what does that look like from the educator standpoint? What kind of things are you talking about with educators in terms of habit development?
Sure. Well, James Clear in Atomic Habits, so interesting. Chapter 1 is about identity. It's about how you identify implicates what you do, the behaviors that you engage in. So I think if we can kind of bring awareness to that, and I think I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast, but it's how we identify in all of these ways. You're a runner, you identify as a runner, right? I'm not a runner. I do not identify as a runner.
I identify you as a runner.
I don't. let me quick say this and then I can go back to your question because this is a really interesting concept. But I had a nanny this summer and I opened my fridge for her to show her the stuff in the fridge. And I had a bunch of fruit, a bunch of veggies that were like accessible and all cut up. And I'm like, we have a lot of fruits and veggies. And I'm like, we're trying to be healthy. And then I'm like, no, we are healthy. So I just think that like, I had to sit with that for a long time of like, I've always identified as trying to be healthy. I try to be healthy. But now I've reframed that and switched that. I'm a healthy person. I'm healthy. And instead of, it's like, I'm trying to be a mom. I'm trying to be a professor right now. I'm trying to be a good person. Like, no, I am a mom. I'm not trying to be a mom. Yeah. I am healthy. Because if you know me, like I'm always doing Whole30. Like that's one thing. My friends are like, oh, are you doing Whole30 right now? Right? Like I'm just always doing things. Yeah. But I think having a clear, like I am a healthy person is going to implicate what I do. Instead of like, I'm trying to be healthy, so I'm trying to do Whole30 for 20 days or whatever. And that's where habits start with how you identify. And I think helping people clarify it and bring it to the surface and change it. Like our identities change. So if you're like, oh, I'm just a teenage dirtbag.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Sorry, I just distracted myself. I'm just a shopaholic. Yeah. I'm just a hot mess. Yeah. I'm a hot mess all the time. Like I don't identify as a hot mess, So if you can just kind of make those come to the surface, identity is really important. And it's not gender identity. It's not sexual orientation. It's just all of these labels that we put on ourselves. Sure. Like I'm just really, I don't know other examples. Yeah. So just kind of clarifying that. And then the next thing is the systems idea. That's the other thing. Like James Clear, one of the best quotes that I have underlined and marked, he says, we do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So you can like have a vision board and manifest anything you want, but it's all about the systems that you have in place to accomplish that. That's where it comes in. It's not about like, I'm just going to, picture it and I'm just going to put a Tesla on my vision board. It's like, that's a great goal. I'm happy for you. But what is your system that you have in place to accomplish that? We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And then I think it's just, it's kind of the basic behaviorist things of making it easy and making bad things hard, like making things that you don't want to do. I'm not going to value it as good or bad. One example, he's like, if you don't want to watch TV every day, unplug the TV every time you use it. If you really don't want to watch TV, unplug it and put it in a closet. And then we'll see how much you want to watch TV, like make it hard. Yeah. So some ways that I use it is just like make it easy. I floss my teeth every night. I wear my retainer every night. I journal every night. I read every night. My nighttime routine is very, it's very solid, I guess. I do the same things every night. Yeah. And it's all of those things. My flosser, my journal, and my book are all on my nightstand. They're right there. I don't even have to think about it. I just pick it up. Yeah. And it's so obvious, right? Like that's so obvious. But if you don't have floss accessible, you probably aren't going to floss. And I want to floss. And I haven't always flossed, right? Like the shame of the dentist where you're like, oh, I want to floss. I like to have good oral hygiene. But it's like make things that you want to do easy, make things that you don't want to do difficult. Yeah. Again, so obvious, but like just making it automated too, like getting those reps in of things. Getting support and social support. So you have this like accountability too. And I love this stuff. Like this is, I think this is a huge predictor of success for people. And just productivity is just like what we do, right? Like action expresses priorities, what we do every day. Kind of another concept related to this, he talks about the aggregation of marginal gains. So it's like the small things that we do add up to a huge change. Sure. And that can be for the good or for the bad, right? Like 2 drinks a night might not seem like a lot, but over 6 months, that can really add up. And, taquitos every night or snacks when your kids are in bed, you've earned it, right? But like that can add up. So those
That's
are just
interesting.
things that I consider. I love, those are my top takeaways that I talk about in these videos is the system setting, the identity piece of what we do, and then just the aggregation of marginal gains. And I hate that concept like at my core.
Oh.
Because I've always been like, I just want to I want to lose 10 pounds now. I want to, buy a Tesla now. I don't want to save my money for 10 years. That's too long. But I'm really starting to see in all of these ways how the aggregation of marginal gains, they really do add up. And some things that just some small changes I've been making in my own life have really added up.
So there's a running quote, and I'm not going to know who this is attributed to because I attribute it to one of the running legends from Sioux Falls because that's where I first heard it. But that, say it again, the aggregate thing. The
aggregation of marginal gains.
Yeah. So little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I hate that. I just want a lot now, right? But it's true. It's true.
But it's motivating. From a running standpoint, it's motivating because it's if I want to run a half marathon or I want to run a marathon or something like that, the trajectory to get to that point is not one giant leap, but it's all of these little things that you're doing week after week consistently that becomes a lot in order for you to accomplish that big goal.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Maybe that's not more simplified, but that's the way I think about it.
No, I like that. And it doesn't just apply to running or to health or to it applies to everything. It applies to your marriage. It applies to your relationships with your kids and your friends. It applies to your finances. It applies to the tidiness of your home. Just everything that you do, it applies to. And it's not a big deal to miss dinner with your family or to not apologize after a fight. But if that happens consistently and you consistently don't show up, you consistently check out or opt out or don't apologize or hold a grudge, that adds up.
That builds up.
Yeah. And I just...
And then the reverse is true too. The kind word, the gentle touch, the card, the little act of service, all of those things day to day within a relationship with somebody, that builds up too.
Oh, totally. And it's not just let's do one grand thing and we'll go to Europe and then it'll save our marriage. No, it's not about that. It's about the thousands of other things.
Yeah.
And I'll just, I'll make up for all of these things that I've done or whatever. It's not one sweeping thing. It's all of these small things, which again, I just don't like that. I've never liked that, but I'm starting to see the value of it, and I'm starting to see how it really does play out in all of these ways.
Yeah.
So can I tell you one thing?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. So Trevor and I got a sauna in our basement.
Okay.
So that's something.
Is that where you demolished the little tiki bar thing?
Oh, no, we're putting in a new bar there eventually. Okay. But it's this freestanding infrared cedar sauna.
Okay.
We got it off of Facebook.
Okay.
And it was $600.
Yeah.
It's an investment, but it's the best money I've ever spent in my life.
For real?
Yeah.
A
sauna. We use it every single night. We go in the sauna. And, there's tons of research on the health benefits, especially with your heart. Just, it's really, really good for you. Yeah. But what this has changed, we do it every night around 8:30 to 9. We sit for about 20 to 30 minutes at 120 degrees. We don't watch TV anymore at all. We watch one show once a week. But that's our time. It's healthy, it's connecting, and we just talk every night in this very regulated environment. Hearts are slowed down, just pouring sweat, it's so, and my gallon of water that I drink comes in handy.
That is going to be useful.
But I'm just thinking all of the ways that just this time, this carved out time, is benefiting us in all of these health and relational benefits.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's the best $600 I've ever spent in my life. And all of our friends are like, can we come in the sauna? I'm like, well, it's a 3-person, so it's it might be awkward. But it's, I don't know. I think of all of the gains. It's priceless for us. Well,
yeah. So spending 30 minutes together, that could be a throwaway thing. Like, oh, it's 30 minutes or whatever. But 30 minutes over the course of a week, over the course of a month, right?
Yeah.
That adds up.
Yeah. And it's like any conflict or any issue, like there's nothing unresolved then, because that's kind of our time. And it's like this very like safe, warm, like a warm hug, right? Like it's not like we're going to bed angry. Like we go to bed just like re-energized in a way. And like sleeping better, like just all of the toxins leaving our body, you know, just like, it's just really cool.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Isn't that unique? We have a sauna in our basement. Like who does that? We do it. It's so random.
Of course.
I know.
You do.
We bought it from a guy in Madison Lake. Like all our kids were with us. We had a trailer, like just okay. He was selling his lake home, selling his Harleys, selling his sauna apparently. And moving into his RV to see the country.
Okay. Well, that's admirable too.
I know. But yeah, the benefits are priceless. And, you know, not only for health, like I said, but also relationally. I'm like, this is better than marriage counseling. Like it's better than a marriage retreat because it's like just this everyday routine now. And that's just kind of, it's now my nighttime routine to sit in the sauna.
Yeah. I love it. I've never been one to sit in saunas for sure. Like, I just
depends on where you are.
Well, I mean, my exposure is only at like health clubs or whatever. And people are
don't wear clothes sometimes.
That's just awkward.
I know. It is.
Yeah.
There's clothes in this sauna.
Yeah. Well.
Jeez Louise. I know. I've never been a sauna person either, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've just found it like hot and uncomfortable. But the infrared is a game changer.
Okay. Well, and again, back to running, like that's heat training, you know, so for us in the Midwest, like there's only a brief period of time where we can like actually train in the heat. So if we want to go run in Arizona or something like that, or down in Florida, like it's a huge adjustment. People think, oh, I've got to adjust if I go up to elevation or something like that. But running in the heat is just such a different thing. But yeah, doing some sauna sessions and in the lead up to that would be the reason that I would think of to get a sauna or to do that, because it's connected to running. But I like yours. That's a good one.
Well, I started the heat training idea. I love the steam room. Like we got a Y membership this January.
Okay.
And I went every day because I would go to the steam room. Like that was my draw. That was my like incentive.
Okay.
It's cold. There's no kids there. It's quiet. And then I go in the workout room and I just watch HGTV and I row because I'm sitting because I don't want to identify as a lazy person, but I keep things simple. But that was like pairing it with something that's pleasurable always makes things more repeatable as well. And sometimes I feel like we associate health with pain and with embarrassment or with deprivation.
Yeah.
And I think if you can reframe it as pleasurable and like feeling good and connecting and like truly pleasurable, not just like trying to trick yourself.
Yeah.
That's
like, I'll feel better after I do this.
Yeah. If I drink celery juice every day, but like same with eating. Like I've always thought of eating, like if you're healthy, you miss out, man. Like you can't have cheese, you can't have bread. But if you can cook some amazing meals, like there's so many simple recipes that like taste amazing and there's no hint of deprivation or missing out. So that's kind of how I've managed to, because I love to eat. Like I would consider myself a foodie. Like I love good food. I love to eat. Like that's how we connect. And I've just kind of changed my idea about that. Like if you can cook awesome food that helps you feel great too, but it has to be awesome food. You can't just, starve yourself or eat bland food that's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, especially if that's something that helps, improve your quality of life or that's important
Well,
to you.
and the deprivation thing then becomes the focus. It's like, what am I not getting?
Yeah.
Rather than what am I getting to say yes to? What meal am I looking forward to? Or it's just a very different, again, mindset or perspective when it comes to these things that we all do every day, which eat, sleep, socialize with people. No, it's good. We should probably land this plane. we're getting close
I
here.
thought this was an all-nighter.
Yeah.
I'm ready to keep talking. Just kidding.
Well, it doesn't have to be a 16 episode, span every single time. But no, it's been a real pleasure having this conversation, getting back in the studio with you. I just always enjoy our time together. It's fun.
I know, it's always interesting, like where it goes. It ended at the sauna,
Yep. We're just gonna.
it always ends
that's
there.
the period here is the infrared sauna.
Yes.
Go out and get one today.
Yeah, I know. I could be a sauna salesperson because all of my friends are like looking in. They're like pricing them out on Facebook and like trying to get Cedar to build one.
No, you've pitched it very
Oh
well.
my gosh,
You've
I'm
made
telling
it sound incredible. Yeah.
Just sweating feels really good. I'm telling you, I'm sleeping better. I have better energy.
Yeah.
So and like, sorry to go off on this tangent as you're trying to land this plane, but like all of the research and like the cardiovascular benefits are like astounding. So 30 minutes a day over the course of 30 years or 20 years, like that really does
little
add
by
up.
little, a little becomes a lot.
I know. I do like that. I'm going to start saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't trademarked it. I
I'm
stole
gonna say
it from
to my
somebody
kids.
else.
They'll be like, "What?"
Yeah.
But that's cool.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Yeah, and again, that's the heat side of things is interesting to me, but also cold exposure is something that's really interesting to me too, and that's something that there was a recent guest that does a lot of breath work, and he talked a little bit about cold exposure in our conversation, and I have been, curious about that since then. And how these different like intentional exposures or dosages of things, how that impacts our physiology and our stress level, our cortisol levels, all of that. That's just very interesting to me and something that I want to continue to learn about.
Yeah. I've heard a lot on that cold exposure too, like the
Ice
cold
bath,
showers.
Cold
Yep,
showers.
Yep.
Yep.
It's painful.
Yeah.
I've tried that. I'm like, okay, I'll do a cold shower. Then I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's too cold.
Yeah.
I like a warm shower.
Yep. Well, or after a run in the winter, then you just go make a snow angel out on the deck.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Did you do that like with hot tubs? Like when you'd sit in a hot tub in the winter, then you like quick go jump in the snow and then come back.
Totally,
that was like the thing to do.
For sure. And on that note, no.
Yes.
No, it's been so fun. I'm excited about this educator platform. So a question for you is if, how is that made available to people, first of all? Like, how can they access that if that's something that they want?
Sure. I would say if you want to share the information on it, and you can share the password too. We're in the final stages of editing it.
Okay.
We're getting some accessibility provisions made because it was kind of studied by an accessibility expert.
Okay.
But by all means, share it.
Okay. So I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put the link to that platform in the show notes along with the password, so that if you're listening and you want to access that, and then people can share that out too,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So it's not private that they can.
No, we want it. We want the information made available, and it's designed for educators. But I think that really anyone can benefit. There's a lot on habits and stress and reflection and joy and play.
Well, I think
and creativity.
you have a list of professionals on the website that are typically found in schools, and so it's not strictly the teacher in the classroom, but it's really anybody in that setting that could benefit from this as well, and maybe other professionals too.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the first of many. I want to keep doing this. I love filming content. I think it's cool to have this bigger impact than just one school. It's like this could be made available to thousands of people. I think that's really powerful.
Well,
and exciting.
All about free to consumer access to good resources, and that's a huge underlying motivator for me with the podcast and in doing this kind of a project. So I'm all on board with that, and happy to be a vessel to put that out into the world.
Cool. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right, Jenna, you take good care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time we get to sit down. Okay?
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm so grateful to you, Jenna, for being an ongoing contributor to the WellMind community. And many thanks to you for spending your time with me today. If you enjoyed our conversation, please check out previous episodes and be sure to click rate and subscribe through your podcast app. That way you will get notified when new episodes drop. Also, look for the Tools for the Well Mind, those mini episodes that I'm going to be releasing on a monthly basis. And be sure to let people know about the Well Mind podcast, share the episode with someone or an educator specifically that you think would enjoy giving it a listen. And be sure to check out the links in the show notes for access to the resources on that wellness platform. Any updates to links or changes on accessibility will be updated in the show notes as soon as the platform becomes available. Many thanks as always to the staff here in the Bethany Lutheran College podcast studio for all that you do for the Well Mind. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well.